Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us. This is the first ever City Council candidate forum that we've had here at El Segundo High School, and we're so grateful to have a lovely turnout of our senior class. So thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule. How many of you are 18 and going to be voting shortly? Yes, very nice. So thank you for staying informed. This is very important. Of course, Mr. Gast, your political behavior teacher. We've got Dr. Jen here, and Mr. Bolaños, I think, is in the back. So thank you guys again for coming. I also want to thank a few other people before we get going here. Angelica Roque, she's our performing arts, our PAC director. She's in the back, so she's helped out, of course, as she always does behind the scenes. So thank you, Angelica. And of course, Mr. Gast for just helping work on this. We've been a team on this one. And then also wanted to let everybody know that these questions that we're going to be asking have been generated by you guys, our senior students. So Mr. Gast and I went over them, and we're excited to ask them today. So the format, I'm gonna sit down now. The format, you're each going to have a minute to answer the questions. We're gonna try to get through as many as we possibly can. And the first we want you guys to take a minute to sort of introduce yourselves. But within that minute, if you could also let us know what you think the most pressing issue facing El Segundo is. I know it's a big question. Okay, 2 minutes for the opening. Or maybe we should do, 2 minutes for the opening. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then also what you believe the most pressing issue facing El Segundo is. And we've got Jake Nichols sitting right down front. He's our ASB president. He's going to be keeping time for us. So he'll hold up a green sign when you're close to the end, and then a red sign at the end. So he's sitting right down front. So if we'll start with Mr. Giroux.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Lance Giroux, and I have been a resident homeowner and the vice president of sales for a local company here in El Segundo for the past 18 years. My wife Gina and I have 2 children. Our son Luke is 12 years old and is at the middle school. My daughter Leah is in 4th grade and over at Center Street School. I'm an active volunteer in the community. I have been the president of the Little League for the past 2 years. I've been on that board for 5. I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I attended Boston College and have a degree in economics. I also achieved an MBA a few years after that. I have worked and lived all around the United States and as well as internationally in both China and in Mexico. My inspiration for running for City Council is simply this. I want to preserve the small community charm that makes El Segundo so special to all of us, while growing the city in a way that keeps offering you and your families great schools, great services, amenities, activities, restaurants, and the quality of life that you've come to expect here. So I just wanted to thank you for inviting me here today, and I look forward to answering your questions, and I appreciate your interest in this election. So the question was, what do I think is the most pressing issue facing the city? 92% of the revenues that we generate as a city are based on businesses. Even though we have a great little small community here, the reality is that our city thrives and survives on revenue generation. And if you look at what our revenue generation is right now, we have a lot of opportunities. We're set up for success. However, we have been relying on the same forms of revenue historically. Has been aerospace, commercial, and retail. And I strongly believe we need to start diversifying that a little bit more and understanding that you need to have a plan going forward so that you are able to not only survive but prosper as we get forward. So I would say that is the most pressing thing that we have to do right now, is actually generate an overall strategic plan in order to ensure the future of the city. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scot Nicol, El Segundo class of 1998. Born and raised in Hawthorne, California, came here in 1992 as a permit student to the middle school, and the middle school used to be at Richmond. After graduation, went on to UCLA, got my degree in sociology. Post-UCLA, entered the working world in the real estate realm. Met my wife in 2007, got married in 2009, chose El Segundo as our home, brought 2 children into the world. Scotty, born in 2012, kindergartner with Miss Moot over at Center Street, and Sullivan, our daughter, born in 2014 at Eagle's Nest across the field here. My candidacy is rooted in a desire to serve the city of El Segundo. as all of you know, being raised here and seeing this town through the lens of a child and a student, you get to understand how truly unique El Segundo is in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. That said, to protect El Segundo, to make sure El Segundo stays this special place, it takes a truly unique individual. I opened up a small business here in town in 2009 with my wife and a couple business partners, BeachMax. Through our time at BeachMax, we've been able to partner with many school groups, youth sports, and so many of the wonderful volunteers we have here in town to make this town so special. I believe El Segundo, from the city standpoint, is a wonderful platform that gives birth to a beautiful community. Our platform is built on education, safety, and infrastructure. No great community can thrive without a very strong platform. The question we were asked was, what is the most pressing issue I see El Segundo facing? And I truly believe that it's a community issue. It's an understanding. It's for all of us to understand what role the city plays, what role the citizens play, and what we can do together. Understanding that we have unfunded liabilities that we have to fund. We have taxes that we bring into this city. Stop, is that 2 minutes? Oh, wow, look at that. We'll get to it later.
Hello, my name is Maria Barden. I grew up in the South Bay. My husband and I raised our 2 daughters here, Ashley and Katrina. They both attended El Segundo High School, graduated 2014, 2015. One of my daughters is graduating with an urban planning degree in May, which I'm very excited. My other daughter is going into a nursing program, both of which I feel that inspired them was the Project Lead the Way program here at El Segundo that helped them and inspired them to go in the direction that they're going in. So I appreciate Chevron and that particular program. I currently work at UCLA Health in the IT department. I have a Bachelor of Science in Healthcare Management. I am the president of our Homeowners Association for over 12 years. My community interest has been with the PTA Run for Education for over 10 years. I also am part of the Ed Foundation throughout my child's academic years here. I'm sorry. Even though I've worked full time, I always made sure that I volunteered for every single school here. I find it very important. I actually even helped Dan O'Toole at the El Segundo TV editing some things, maybe back in 2012 or 13. I'd like to see how that turned out. I'm proud of living in El Segundo. This is a place that you can do baseball, golf, aquatics, ice skating, hockey, almost anything here. You could basically go surfing in the morning, play golf in the afternoon, go ice skating at night, and do all of it here, right here in El Segundo. Aside from everything in El Segundo, my main point is security, and security for you, the students. That is my #1 topic. Also, priority is our finances, and to make sure to find revenue streams to pay down some of our deficit. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Chris Pimentel. I was born at Castle Air Force Base, which is about 5 hours north of here by Merced. My father was in the Air Force, so we moved all around the country. And when he retired, we retired to McConnell Air Force Base, which is in Wichita, Kansas, next to a runway and an oil refinery in the middle of a converted field. My prospects there were somewhat different location-wise than yours may be here, but I was able to secure a scholarship from the Marine Corps and go to the University of Virginia. So I served in the infantry out of the University of Virginia for 8 years and got to go all around the world in some of the manner that I'd been all around the country as a child. Leaving the Marine Corps, I went to the Department of Homeland Security, where I worked in a public-private partnership, and then was fortunate to go to the private sector and end up here in Los Angeles. I have 3 small children here as well. I coach in Little League and soccer and softball and all the sorts of things you all probably remember as a child. But as a grown-up getting involved, I will say that there are 3 big issues that we will discuss, and you will be beaten over the head with zoning and pensions and revenues, but what's pertinent to you in a significant way, what's pertinent to me as an 18-year-old, is how are voters engaged, right? What do we care about and how do we break those things up? Now, this will shock you and dismay you, but it only feels like about 5 minutes ago for all of us when we were one of you. Now, admittedly, I had an awesome mohawk then, and now I have an unawesome reverse mohawk. But That being said, I could not have told you the difference between what a city council does, what a board of governors does, what the water board does, the city council. I couldn't have told you why, if I carry a drone, it's city business. If I fly a drone, it's federal business. Why the beach belongs to the county, the beach bluffs belong to the state, and why the road belongs to us. There will be pressure in the back of your brain to throw your hands up and say, I don't get it, it's someone else's problem. But you're 18-year-olds, right? So it is your problem. And if you don't take the time to become educated voters and not just voter voters, there's someone who's figuring these things out for you. And you are conceding to them, telling you what to do. And when I was an 18-year-old, priority one was don't let people tell me what to do. So please pay attention to us here, and we'll do our best to explain. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Audience, love the applause. Now that everybody's had their applause, in order to save time, we are going to save our applause until the very end so we can get through as many questions as possible. So moving on to Mr. Gast.
Good afternoon.
No, save your applause.
I just want to let you know, for time's sake, not all the questions are going to be answered by all four of you. We've rotated and had two of you answer some and two of you answer in the next one. So this question, some of the questions are more serious than others. I've kind of mixed them up. So the first question is for Mr. Pimentel and Mr. Nicol. There has been talk in the city about adding a student seat to the city council. Our students wanted to know what would be your stance on that. How do you view that? And how do you envision a student seat working?
There is a great tradition of this in America. We see it in Congress right now, right? The District of Columbia and Puerto Rico have non-voting members of the caucus. They sit in, they participate and influence decisions as members of Congress, but what they do not do is participate in votes. And that's for a very good reason, right? And some of those are specific to where citizens sit in the great canon of our government, specifically for Puerto Rico and DC. But as a student, right, there are issues that would come before a city council which it would be unfair to vest you in knowing, right? There's a degree of experience that goes into forming these things, but it doesn't make your opinion less valid. So when you have non-voting caucus members of any kind of assembly, there's merit to it. Now, do I think that a city and a general law charter like ours necessarily works well for that? We don't have a legislature and an executive the way that a federal government or a state government does. But I think there's validity in adding a student voice either as a commission or as a non-voting caucusing member. I think so.
Answer the same question, rebut, just answer the same question. Great. So the idea of a student seat on city council, I think it's a great idea. I've often felt that sometimes experience, as much as it's a strength, sometimes it can be a weakness. It can become a blinding factor in your life. Whereas all of you being 18-year-olds, you have a blank slate. You can look at things with a fresh set of eyes and add value with your comments and how the world is different for you. I'll celebrate my 20-year class reunion this year, and I can tell you the world is a lot different today for you than it was for me when I was here. So the eyes you see this world through are completely different than my 18-year-old eyes. I would welcome that seat, yes, along the terms of a non-voting seat, but I would also hope that it would be someone elected from amongst you, someone that you guys look to as a leader, someone who can represent your entire group and speak from the group, not just from their personal experience. Getting involved in your civic duty, it's very important, and I would welcome the idea.
Thank you. Next question is going to go to Ms. Barden and Mr. Giroux. The Parks and Recreation Department, according to the students, is funded below par, and the teen center and other city-run fields around town are in need of an upgrade. What would you do as a council member to address this issue?
Well, Measure C that's on the table right now, which will be on the ballot, will be very helpful in that. If we can acquire that $9 million before the county does, that's going to help with those fields and funding some of those projects. I've always said that it's really important. Our town and our interest level of our homes and around here is all dependent upon how good our fields are, how good our schools are, you know, all the functions that we have in this city. So whatever it takes that we can make sure and ensure that our fields and our teen centers, our aquatic centers, our parks and recs are up to par, that's number one for me.
As the president of the Little League, and I was also the president of the El Segundo Girls Softball League for a few years, this is a an issue that is near and dear to my heart. There is a lack of green space in town, and the facilities that we have here, while good and better than others, can certainly see improvement in the way they look and the way they play. The way I would actually look at solving this, and it's something that I hope to do almost immediately, since this is such an issue near and dear to my heart, is we need to actually collaborate with some of the businesses in town. We have a tremendous amount of business here, a tremendous amount of revenue, and to be able to collaborate with those individuals to come up with ideas to help rehabilitate, we don't call it rehabilitate the teen center, because that thing really needs some help. People spend a lot of time there. There's no reason for it to look like that, quite honestly. And we have enough people that are invested in this town from a business perspective that would be willing, in my opinion, to contribute to that. Thank you.
This next question we're mixing up will be to Mr. Pimentel and Mrs. Barden. This one's a little more serious. My students came back from City Hall shadowing day on Friday, and the police department seems to be having a hard time with hiring and retention of police officers. Of the 1,200 people who applied, only 6 qualified. And also in the next 3 years, we were told that 30% of the police force will be eligible for retirement. What would you recommend to do about this issue? I'm sorry, I didn't give you such much to go first. Mr. Pimentel.
You know, I think the scariest part of the 30% retiring is the fact that 30% are eligible to retire, right? And what that means is that 30% of your police force, so 1 in 3 guys who's going to show up in an emergency, is close to 50. Right? Now, 50 and 20 are different. 25 and 55 are different. The physical abilities and aptitude of those things are different. And the burdens you get from injuries on the job from an older force are different. Now, our police force, as it's structured, are we going to be loaded with 22-year-olds? Are we going to compete with the Los Angeles Police Department for that, and do we want to? That's a question for the chief to answer in terms of how he staffs things and what he wants the composition of his force to be. But what we need to do is have officers that have the temperament and fit and feel rewarded and accepted in our town to work here successfully. So what does that accession model look like? You know, right now, putting someone through 22 months of training to find out if they're fit for duty does not seem to be working because we're not getting the officer mix that we want. And certainly our pay and compensation structure for pensions do not seem to be competitive with what the LAPD and the sheriffs are offering. So we need to make a solid decision on that as far as how we're getting mid-range officers and paying for that talent.
I agree. Well, let me just say that the fact that 1,200 have applied and only 6 have qualified really says something about our El Segundo Police Department. They're looking for the best of the best. And if it means taking a little bit more to hire the right people, I'm all for that. The 30% that are also the morale system with the police department here. I know that they need to have, there is a morale problem and compensation needs to be addressed because apparently in other cities they are giving more. So we're losing a lot of our police force to other cities. So retaining our police force here, giving them the tools that they need and the training is really important. And once they feel valued and they have the training and everything that they need in this town, they're going to want to stay here. That is concerning about the 30% leaving, but we have been hiring them. I think only the best is yet to come for El Segundo, and we will be assured and staffed correctly.
This next question goes to Mr. Nicol and Mr. Giroux. The fire department is in need of some upgrades. One of them, a technology upgrade, such as GPS for their trucks. How might the city go about making these improvements, and are there any other recommendations you might suggest?
You said Scott.
Scott, yeah.
I don't think I'm hot. There you go. Fire department, GPS, technology upgrades. So if you look at what the current city council has proposed and what they've put into place in all departments is technology upgrades. It's across the board. When we got our briefing with all department heads, every single department head mentioned technology upgrades. So it's coming down the line. Understand this, being an 18-year-old, things don't happen when you snap your fingers at City Hall. It takes about 2 years from an idea to get through the process of getting an assessment done to when it actually goes into place and is on the budget and gets the money placed on it. Would I support any and all technology upgrades across all departments? Yes, I would. The fire department, with regards to GPS on their vehicles, I'd love to speak with the actual fire chief and the firefighters themselves to know if it's really necessary for us to have the GPS locators on their vehicles. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to obviously echo a few things that Scott said, but the reality is that in all of our emergency services right now, tech upgrades are the biggest thing that we're looking at. When it comes to fire, though, and GPS, I'd have to ask and find out exactly what we really need for El Segundo. One of the things you have to realize is that even though our fire station, the firemen are in El Segundo, they get called out to go to other places. There is a reciprocal working relationship that we have. So the question I have on this is that I'm not sure we need a GPS on a truck to service El Segundo. We're not quite that big on this. But I do understand for the safety of these officers and the other of these firemen and the other places they're going to have to go and serve, that it could obviously come in very, very handy for how quickly they can get to where they need to be. So again, I just have to look at the overall effect. What are the benefits and what are the negatives? Thank you.
All right, the next question is... Thank you. Next question is actually for all of you. With school safety in the headlines and an upcoming school bond being voted on April 10th, one, do you agree with the bond? And two, what would you propose to do with some of the money to ensure the safety of students and faculty here at El Segundo High School and our other schools as well?
Who are we starting with?
Let's
all at once?
Let's start with Mrs. Barden first.
Okay. I'm all in favor of the school bond. I think, like I mentioned before, the way we see our schools is a direct reflection on our city. I had an epiphany the other day, this weekend, because of the safety issues and everything that's been going on in Florida and some of the other schools. And I don't know if it's out there, but I would like to develop an app for students to use on their phones. So if they want to be anonymous or not, you can signal to either a police department or somebody at the school if you just sense that somebody's wrong or something is not right. There has to be more security in the schools today, period. There are schools that are being built now that are all encompassed, no fields, you're locked in, and I don't believe that's the way to go. I think we need to have security around our schools, but be able to have free fields and feel safe while you're in your own city. So to answer your questions, yes, I believe I'm all in favor of the school bond. But looking for the best ways to use those funds, it might take some time to make the right decision on how it should be spent.
School safety, priority number one. As I said, 3 principles that the city needs to provide: safety, education, infrastructure. For you need to understand that there's a separation. The school district and the city are not one and the same, even though you would think that they are. All of you, the students of El Segundo Unified School District, are citizens of El Segundo, and therefore you fall under the city banner, and yet these choices are made by the school board and the superintendent. Superintendent's like a city manager, school board is like a city council person. So how would I, as a city council person, support the schools with regards to school safety? I would listen to the school board. When the superintendent asked the police chief for whether it be money to help with more fences or security access ports or school resource officers, and the police chief asked us as city council members to procreate those funds, I would support it wholeheartedly. I believe it needs to be a joint effort from the city and the school board to protect your safety.
First thing I think, first of all, yes, on the bond measure. I mean, as a resident, and with 2 young kids coming up to the system, I'm not one for taxes and adding things onto the bills I already have to pay, but when I know it's going to be directly put into my community and directly affect my kids and the residents, then I'm all for that. Understanding what a bond money can actually be used for is important here. Bond money can be used for infrastructure, deferred maintenance, technology. not salaries, benefits, and necessarily programs. So what we're gonna need help from is, you're gonna need help from the city on this. And I do believe, if you look right now, Manhattan Beach just pledged $1 million towards their school district in order to upgrade the safety in the schools. So I think that's something we have to look for. I'm not saying we have to do exactly that, but it's important to look at that. The city needs to advocate on behalf of the schools. Kids that go to schools here, all of you, you live here. You are part of that city. It is a reciprocal relationship. So I think it's very, very important for the city to do everything that they can to ensure the safety of the schools.
I think if the school board goes for a bond for the district, I think one of the key elements is to enumerate what it's going to go for. You know, in 2007, Measure Q failed on its merits because people looked at what it was enumerated for and didn't like it. So when they put this out, if you want to make a compelling sales pitch to people and say, look, you're going to be paying for something for 20 years, tell them what it's for, and I think it will sell itself. I mean, certainly, I'm over-invested because I have children, so I will reap the benefits. I'm not the person you need to convince when it comes to a school bond. But the reciprocal arrangement between the city and the school is that the school owns the defense, right? It owns the physical plan. The city owns the people and the processes. And what the city can allocate funding on, we're budgeted for 62 officers. We have 57 police officers. Maybe one of those 5 spots we could fill goes to another resource officer, so we could have one all the way over at Wiseburn where they have 1,600 kids. Maybe we invest our time in investigations, in training, and coaching students and teachers as to what to look for with other students if someone looks like they're at risk or in trouble. And then you can do things like we can support hiring the consultancies that go in and review our security plans like they're doing right now, and getting some returns that way.
Thank you. This was also, we wanted to ask all 4 of you, so maybe we could go reverse order and start with Mr. Pimentel. Rezoning in different areas of El Segundo has been a hot topic issue. Places like Smoky Hollow or possible residential on the east side of Sepulveda. How do you feel about these or other zoning issues in El Segundo?
Whenever you embark on change for someplace, you know, the key thing is if you have something that's succeeding, you don't want to change the elements that make it successful, right? So we, as prospective city councilmen or city councilmen, you're going to grab the tenets that make El Segundo special, that make it different, that make it succeed, and not alter those. But you also have to have a frank discussion about which things are just things. And if the legacy building that can be put to better use, that is not historically significant, let's have the courage of our convictions and make the broad zoning changes we need to do that. Now, I think in the next 4 years, the zoning changes we're talking about are things that enhance the revenue that we need to pay off our pensions in these pieces, right? So that might be taking a place that is currently zoned for, you know, in the Smoky Hollow case, a light industrial facility, and saying, hey, we want to change the zoning and make it more palatable for investment to go in there. I think what there is no appetite for, and I could be wrong, but reading the tea leaves, there's no appetite for the east side of Sepulveda and taking high revenue zoned for commercial spots and flipping those to low revenue residential that puts at risk the way we live.
Yeah, I'm going to handle the residential east of Sepulveda, and I'm going to break it down for you like this. The way we look at El Segundo is we live on the west side. This is where the castle is. This is where the schools are, the fields are. Everything we love is here. Sepulveda is the moat that protects the castle, and everything on the east side is there to generate revenue for everything that we need as a community here. So anytime that you look to take away potential space that can be used as a revenue generator, you're doing a disservice to your city. It's also going to be, if it does happen, and I hope it does not, a drain on emergency services. We're going to have to pay for a police substation to go over there. The biggest piece of it, though, is that it does fundamentally change, potentially, in the next generation, what El Segundo looks like. You potentially have 2 sides of the city, in east and the west. You have 2 school districts, because that's Wiseburn School District on that side, and you have 1 city council. It will fundamentally change the entire makeup of the city itself. And this is why I do not believe that rezoning east of Sepulveda for residential is a good idea in any way. Thank you.
Rezoning Smoky Hollow and or east of Sepulveda, it's a conversation that takes many, many years to have. In my 5.5 years on the Planning Commission, 4 years ago, I asked for the Smoky Hollow specific plan to be reviewed. We are finally seeing the environmental impact report for that specific plan now. Yes. 4 years. 4 years to review it. Understand that our city has a master plan document that we live by. Everything in the public process takes longer than you'd like it to, but it's designed to protect us. Designed to protect us from drastic changes. Rezoning East Sepulveda, terrible idea. That's where all the money comes for all the services we enjoy here in town. You have to remember that. Do not fundamentally alter the identity in which we are here to preserve. Smoky Hollow. When they look at Smoky Hollow, many people think Smoky Hollow is Grand Avenue South. It's actually Franklin South. It's the 100 blocks. And if you look at our big neighbor there to the south, Chevron, their two main refining vehicles are right there near Smoky Hollow West and Smoky Hollow East. We must be very careful with this buffer.
So actually, the Weisburn district was here first, and I don't know if many of you know, but the school zoning east of Sepulveda is Weisburn district. So you as students have to let us know, if we rezone and you have residents east of Sepulveda, are you going to be okay with having students compete against El Segundo? Another thing, the Unified School District here in El Segundo wasn't adapted until 1932. Smoky Hollow, I think, is a perfect area where we can do a lot of multi-use, really millennial upgrades and make it really fun. I don't see us going over to east side of Sepulveda right now. We have a lot to do in this town that we can do. Businesses, we might as well have businesses there that are generating money instead of using our public safety force to go there with students on the east side of Sepulveda. So I'm not in favor of rezoning. I am in favor of doing a lot of things here on west of Sepulveda with our security and everything else first. Thank you.
Thank you all. This next question is for Mr. Nicol and Mrs. Barden. Increasing revenue through tourism has also been a topic of discussion. We would like to know if you have any ideas to increase revenue through tourism and/or any other ideas for revenue streams to El Segundo.
Maria or myself. So tourism in El Segundo. We have 2,500 roughly hotel rooms here in El Segundo. Just every time you see a hotel being built, just give it a little golf clap. Just know that that is where most of our money comes from. That is a 5-time taxable event when you see a hotel. Now, in regards to tourism, so Monday through Friday, we do not see vacancies in those hotels. Lots and lots of business travelers. Over the weekends, there are plenty of vacancies. Our hotel representatives are constantly asking, what can we do as El Segundo to try to drive more traffic? Me as a citizen of El Segundo, I think, well, how can I utilize those 2,500 guests Monday through Friday to boost sales here in town? If any of you have traveled to any large metropolitan city in the last decade, you've seen rental bike kiosks. There's a company called Bird Scooters who just got an angel investor of $100 million and is all through Venice and looking to expand on the little electric scooters. How I would boost tourism and sales downtown is pedal and scoot those hotel guests into our downtown to spend their money.
I think it's a great opportunity for tourism for El Segundo. We can capture people just maybe having a flight and they're delayed. We want those people to come here. If we have a Top Golf over here, maybe not at the lakes, maybe somewhere else, you know, let them come over here and spend their money and have a little entertainment. You know, go ice skating, use the hockey facilities, you know, golf, get a ride-sharing program, have them go down to the beach, spend their money, go eat at Rock and Brew and go on Main Street. We need to fix maybe some of the restaurants north of Main Street. But there's a lot of things that we can do as far as generating revenue for other cities to come in town to spend money. We don't charge for parking here. A lot of people from Manhattan Beach are coming here spending their money because they don't want to pay for parking in Manhattan Beach. So I think it's a very exciting time. We need to create tourism. We have more hotels here. We can get the airport people and other revenue from other cities too. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is for Mr. Pimentel and then Mr. Giroux. What do you see, how do you see the future of the plunge, or what do you see for the future of the plunge? I think that was for you, Mr. Pimentel, first.
You know, the plunge is for, I think, most of us who live on the west side, this tremendous resource, right? It is the pool of choice. And the great, I should say great miss, the decision to put the new pool, the Aquatic Center, on the east side strikes a lot of us as marginally inconvenient. It's very difficult for your kids to walk over there. It's very difficult for a 14-year-old to suddenly get a motorcycle and drive over there for practice. So having the plunge is an important part of anchoring our families over here in an activity. Now, there is a funding mechanism built in to retrofit the plunge. It is going to be an enormous capital improvement. I think the $2 million that we think it's going to cost is probably a little bit optimistic, but setting aside that money and safeguarding the money that we allocate for it has got to be a priority, because I think that we are being a little too optimistic if we expect people here to go to the Aquatic Center by Wiseburn for recreation.
The plunge is our pool. The Aquatic Center is an aquatic center. The Aquatic Center is built for water polo events, for swimming events. This in here is our community pool, and as such, it has to be funded. It has to be improved. Those of you who still go there on a regular basis, you know what I'm talking about when you go downstairs and try to get changed. This is a building that needs a drastic renovation, and it must be prioritized. When you look at our budget, there is a $70 million general fund that we have, okay? So money goes to certain things based on how they are prioritized. We just have to make the decision to take care of this and make it a priority instead of just continually kicking it down the road and telling everybody to go on the other side of Sepulveda to go swim. Thank you.
Thank you all. We have 2 more rounds. This next round is going to be for all of you to give. It's going to be quick questions that'll say yes or no, except for the last one. It'll ask you something to answer. But these are more lighthearted, maybe a little bit. And then we'll do your closing statements. Number 1, I'd like to hear from all of you. We'll just start at this end and work down the table. How do you feel about bringing a dog beach to El Segundo? Yes or no?
No.
No.
No, we have a dog park.
No. You'll see when you have kids.
What about a bike rental company or companies to rent bikes in town? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 A heavily caveated yes.
How about upgrades to the library with new technology?
Maybe. Okay. It's not a yes or no answer.
We're asking them if they would pay for upgrades to the library with new technology. That is something that was an issue on Friday's City Hall meeting.
Friday City Hall meeting.
All our kids went to Shadow.
Oh, gotcha. So now I'll give you a legitimate answer on that. Technology that we need for the students that go there, yes. I just don't know what the cost of it is, so it's difficult for me to say that.
I understand these questions.
Yes.
Yes. Have you seen Manhattan Beach's library?
Yes.
All right, here's simple yes or no. Do you like puppies?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No brainer.
I think this was planted by my wife. So in that interest, I will say yes.
This one's a little more serious. Came up in discussion though. How about building a desalination plant north of El Porto?
No.
Can't legally take a stance.
Information comes out today.
Yeah, the information is out today on it. An instinctive yes, but I'd like to read the EIR. It's out today.
Fair enough. How about, are you going to vote for the school bond?
Yes.
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 Haven't seen it. I will instinctively say yes because I'm biased toward it.
Thank you. And last one, what is your favorite part of living in El Segundo?
Wow. It's a yes. Quite honestly, the favorite part for me living in El Segundo is that everything that I want, need, and cherish is all within a 1 mile square radius, 2 mile square radius, and if I don't want to, I don't have to leave.
What I love about El Segundo is it passes the wave test. You can wave at any stranger in this town, and they'll smile and wave right back at you.
Most friendliest business city. when you talk to people here, they've lived here for over 50 years sometimes, and you can see why. The community is the most important thing. When you go out there and you meet everyone, a lot of people know each other, and there's neighborhood watch, everyone looks after each other. And you have the ocean right here, you have a lot of things right here, but yet it still feels like a small town for some reason. And that is the most charming thing.
I love that if you go around the world and grab a random stranger and ask them to describe what they think America is like, and then you ask someone to describe what El Segundo is like, they're basically the same thing. People are friendly, they're involved, they're responsible, they are nice, and they care. Granted, you're in high school, trust me, it gets better. It gets better.
One more sort of lighthearted question. Think back to your high school self to sort of identify with these kids out here. Give us a brief, who were you in high school? What were you into? Who were you in high school?
I was those 5 guys sitting back there in the baseball uniforms about halfway back there. That's what I was an athlete. I was a baseball player in high school and baseball player in college. And as far as what my school life was like, I was an underachiever in that regard. But I still think I managed to find myself at the right time. Again, as Chris was saying, your life gets better. It gets more difficult than it gets better. But yes, I would be back there, probably a little bit further back than those guys are, but they weren't allowed to.
My high school self, I was an athlete here in El Segundo High School, but I was also very involved in everything. I had friends in every different group, every clique. I remember being at lunchtime and just kind of bouncing around from clique to clique, and I loved that here at this school, we could be whoever we wanted to be, and everyone knew everybody. There were no secrets, there were no strangers, and that was something that was really special, and yeah, I cherish those moments.
Hey, don't hold it against me. I went to Maricosta. I was a cheerleader, played tennis, volleyball, but my mother's sitting right there in the middle. She can attest for me. I would come home and I would draw up businesses every single day. I worked ever since I was 15 years old. I just love this. I love El Segundo. I wanted my kids to be here, so I really cherish what you have here. So.
You know, you have these moments where you think, like, what would it be like if I met myself then with myself now? And I think what's different is, you know, when you're younger, your time horizons are so different. You know, things are so immediate, and a sense of opportunity or of what life holds is just really difficult and nebulous. You know, I lived and died by high school football, right? Lifted weights afterward, then I went to work in a materials yard, then I'd go home and my brother and I would fight for a while, and then would reset and do the same thing the next day. So the idea of beating, you know, Wichita South or Remington in the state playoffs was this all-consuming item. And then all of a sudden, when high school ends, you know, the world is at your feet, and you sometimes have to really, really reach for a quality mentor or someone to say, look, there's potential in you to do other things, because there is life after high school. And I think if I could meet myself, and that's sort of I think this question is, but look, man, there's things that you can broaden out at a younger age, because when you get to school or you go out into the world, there's people who have had access to it in probably the way that you guys access information that people our age just didn't have. You know, the internet didn't exist yet when I was 17. Well, it existed in the lab, it didn't exist at our fingertips. So I think that's sort of it's a different animal.
I appreciate the candor very much and a little levity. To wrap us up, I'd like everybody to give just a 1-minute closing statement. Maybe you want to go back to something or let us know something that we didn't cover in our questions. Yeah, let's go ahead and start with Mr. Pimentel and work our way backwards. Thank you.
You know, things I wouldn't have known when I was 17 or 18 is what is a obligated or non-obligated expense and what's a pension obligation. Those words tend to mean nothing. If you continue to be El Segundo residents, the things that will affect you are a giant credit card bill that the city owes. So imagine it being the January after Christmas and we've bought a lot of presents, right? And so now we're at the point where we have a $134 million bill that we need to raise funds for. And we do that the way these gentlemen were talking about, right? The way we increase revenue is by tapping the revenue streams we have. hotels, which give us something on the order, depending on how you calculate it, up to 1/3 of our revenue, right? So we like hotels. We like the tax that people pay there. We like the services that people consume. So I would ask you, as you look here and differentiate, decide what voting looks like, the concern that would weigh heavily on me is that the way that we can spend money, whether it's on pools or libraries or on teen centers, all of that general fund expense, the priority that eats at that is this giant bill that hovers in the ether, and it's a bit of this, what you'll hear called a structural deficit. So when I look at my plans, and hey, here's Chris, and here's what I think about, these are the things I work on every day at work, right? We go in and talk to companies about how they structure these things. So as you look forward and say, what do I believe in when I go to choose a candidate, you think of what are his new ideas and what are his basic proficiencies. I think my basic proficiencies lend itself to solving the riddle of this huge pension obligation that really puts at risk the way we live. So I'd appreciate your vote, and if not now, later on when we meet, I'd appreciate seeing you on time.
I think my strength is listening and getting things done. I've learned a lot from the community. I've knocked on your doors. I've listened to your concerns. The concerns on Dean Street are different than on Concord. They're different on Maple. Solving solutions. I work at UCLA. I work with physicians. I work for analysts and managers and project managers. And I know about solving solutions. And some are very easy, and some take a little bit more perseverance. But it's even more concerning working in healthcare because we have patient safety that's at stake. So it's really important to do things right and in a timely manner. My experience in aerospace at Boeing, when I used to work at Boeing, and also with healthcare and also being in the IT world, is a perfect reflection of where El Segundo came from and where it's going in the future. I'm really excited about the businesses and the new business growth here. And I would love the opportunity, my experience in marketing and public relations. I'm very excited about El Segundo and the new businesses that are going to generate more revenue for you. So I would really appreciate your vote. I humbly ask for your vote on April 10th.
I'll leave you with this. You're 18. Well, some of you are 18 and you can vote. But those of you who aren't, just think about this. You're about to go out into the world. You're going to go to college. You're going to get jobs. You're going to incur debt. Don't be scared of any of that. Welcome it. Welcome it as a challenge. Have some fun with it. And just remember, being a citizen in this world, it's not just going about your business and living your life and letting other people do the work. Be a citizen with a capital C, as they say. Be informed, be engaged, stay informed, voice your concerns, and don't just pay attention to the news cycle. Because state and national politics, they hit the news cycle. Local level stuff that you can touch, you can feel, you can taste. It's not going to be out in the news. You may have to dig for it a little bit. You may have to talk to a local representative. Build relationships, and don't be scared to voice your opinion. Your opinion matters, but don't just march. Don't just go to a rally. Follow it up with an email. Follow it up with an action plan and do something. I can tell you this, when you volunteer, it is not a selfless act. It is a very selfish act. It's an act that's going to bring you great joy and pride, and you're going to look in the mirror one day and you're going to be very proud of the person that you've become. So go out in the world, vote, and take an active role in your society. Thank you.
You know, it was about 32 years ago that I found myself in an auditorium that looked remarkably like this and in seats that looked remarkably like yours in my own hometown, although they weren't quite as nice as these ones are. I had been signed up to vote, registered as a senior, and local elections were happening, and my buddy's dad was running for mayor. So I'm having a major deja vu moment right now in here. Whatever your personal reasons were for coming here today, whether it's because you wanted to, because you had to, or because they offered you extra credit, I appreciate you participating in this. And as you graduate and go off into the world and experience all that life has to offer you, I ask that you do a couple things. First of all, be involved, be educated, be knowledgeable, and above all, be invested in the communities that you find yourself in, whether that be on a college campus, your place of employment, or any community that you decide to live in outside of El Segundo. Life is going to come at you fast. You're going to feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose most of the time, and it's going to get a little bit overwhelming. But Learn to enjoy the ride. Learn to enjoy the experiences that you're going to be having, because you're going to learn valuable lessons both from the positives and the negative things that happen to you over your lifespan. And it will help shape you into the adults that you're going to be. And who knows, maybe 30 years from now, you're going to find yourself up here at a table looking out at the next generation of leaders in El Segundo. Thank you very much.